Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It's 1:01 p.m. and I'm going to call the July 6th meeting of the Planning Advisory Committee meeting to order. Just before we make a motion to adopt the agenda, we've got a couple of changes that we need to address. So one being is item 6.2 under regular and returned reports. Director Rojas has a time commitment this afternoon, so if the committee members don't have an issue, I'd like to move that report up and deal with it before the public session of the meeting. And along with that, we have a late deputation request that came in after the deadline to also speak to 6.2. So in order for that to happen, we would have to have a motion to waive the procedural bylaw to allow that deputation. So any issues with moving 6.2 up? Mayor Latham?
I have no issues with moving it up. I'm just questioning whether we need to hear from the deputation before we deal with the 6.2 report. Okay.
Everybody okay with that? We want to, I guess what we should do is do a motion to waive the procedural bylaw to allow it, but we'll allow Juan and Christina to go through their report or whatever and then see whether he still needs to make a deputation. Does that make sense? Do you want to give that motion, Councillor O'Reilly? Is there a seconder? Mayor Latham, all in favor? That carries. Okay. Can I, at this point, have a motion to accept or adopt the amended agenda? Councillor Dunn, seconded by Member Barkwell. All in favor? Carries. Thank you. All right, so we'll move right into 6.2. Or sorry, any declaration of pecuniary interest? Okay, seeing none, we'll move into 6.2. Juan and Christine. Do you want to go through?
Yeah. Thank you through the chair to committee. The report is dealing with the Sugar Woods Phase 2 subdivision agreement. The subdivision agreement will bring in approximately 120 new units in the form of single detached dwellings as well as townhouses. The agreement sort of builds on the previous development, and it will bring in some development to the north. The agreement is structured in a very similar way to the first agreement, and it proposes to go past the 100 units. We have received the appropriate documentation from the developer to say that there is demand to go beyond 100 units in accordance with the Lindsay OP policies. So that condition has been satisfied. They are requesting a deferral of development charges, which has been supported by staff as well. Pre-servicing agreement is being entered into shortly by the engineering department. That will allow them to start servicing for this next phase. The subdivision agreement then will get finalized within the next month, and the M plan, which is so the subdivision plan, which is also attached to the report, is satisfactory from our perspective. They have provided the information that all of the new lots and blocks meet the lot area and frontage requirements under the ministerial zoning order. So from that perspective, we're happy to proceed with the subdivision agreement as attached. The development meets all of the relevant provincial policies, local policies, and zoning under the ministerial zoning order. So from that perspective, we respectfully recommend that the application or that the subdivision agreement be adopted and move ahead as contained in the attachment. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Richard. Committee, any questions of Richard? Mayor Latham?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Richard, there was a request came in for a reduction in securities on this application from the pre-servicing agreement to the subdivision agreement, and I'm just wondering if perhaps the Director Rojas could rationalize that for us. I know we've done this in the past. I had a conversation with him. Seems to make sense, but perhaps for the rest of the committee, he could rationalize it if you're okay with that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through the chair. You're absolutely correct. So Director Hawley mentioned that we're in the process of entering into a pre-servicing agreement. We expect to have that agreement done with the developer within the next 2 to 3 weeks or earlier. As part of that process, they will put up securities under the pre-servicing agreement. What the developer has requested is at the time of subdivision agreement, which that you have in front of you, any work that was completed during pre-servicing, the securities get reduced down to 10%. I should clarify that it's work completed, inspected, and certified by the engineer. So for any works completed during the pre-servicing, which we think is going to be the majority of the underground services, then when we roll into the subdivision agreement, that those elements and only those elements be reduced down to 10%, and the works not included in the pre-servicing agreement will stay at 100% securities in the subdivision agreement. This is a similar approach that we took in their phase 1 subdivision / pre-servicing agreement. Thank you.
Any further questions of Director Rojas while we have him? Okay. Any other questions of Richard or the file? Okay. If there's none, is Mr. Fry present with us, or is he online?
Yes, Mr. Fry is
Good afternoon.
present.
Good afternoon,
Yes,
Mr.
good
Fry.
afternoon.
Would you still like to speak to 6.2?
Actually, that's a very good question. Director Rojas has provided a very succinct description, and I don't think that I could add anything. I'm just here to answer any questions if the committee has any. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, committee, you've heard from Director Hawley and Director Rojas. What are your wishes? Mayor Latham?
Thank you. I'm fine approving it as printed, but I'm wondering, what do we need to add anything to this to approve the reduction in services, which isn't part of this report? Maybe a question for the director.
Certainly through the chair to the mayor. Yes, we should probably include another line that basically sort of reiterates what Director Rojas indicated, that a reduction in securities be approved for those works that are constructed, inspected, and certified through the phase 2 works.
Through the pre-servicing agreement.
That's correct, through the pre-servicing agreement.
Okay, so I'm happy to move that the report plan 2022-045 Lindsay 217 Developments Inc. subdivision agreement for Sugarwood Phase 2 Lindsay be received, that the subdivision agreement for Sugarwood Phase 2 City of Kawartha Lakes substantially in the form attached as Appendix C to report plan 2022-045 be approved by council, and whatever you just said about the reduction in securities, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute any documents and agreements required by the approval of this agreement. I'll move that.
Okay, as seconder, Councillor O'Reilly. Any discussion? If there's no further questions or discussion, calling the question, all in favor? That carries. Thank you. All right, so we'll move back to item 3 on the agenda, public meeting reports. As required under the Planning Act, a public meeting is being held prior to the committee making any recommendation on these applications. Any recommendations made today will be forwarded to the July 19th council meeting. The purpose of this public hearing is to allow the committee to gather information on the applications before us, to hear those wishing to make oral submissions on applications, and to allow the committee to ask questions of the applicants, interested parties, and staff. Everyone who makes a presentation at this meeting is requested to provide their name for the public record. In the interest of time, the committee respectfully asks that you keep your presentation to no more than 5 minutes. When called, please turn on your video and turn off your mute and state your name. So we're going to jump right into item 3.1, Plan 2022-029, an application to amend the zoning bylaw 93-30 at 460 Thunderbridge Road, Lindsay, Tribute Homes, Lindsay, 2 Limited, home sales establishment with model homes. Ian Walker.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to apologize for my voice. I've got a little bit of a cold right now, so I will try to speak loud and clear so that everyone can hear me here. So this is the first of 3 applications being considered. This is specifically the sales center for the entire Tribute development. This will be the sales center for both the north and south development. This being the location map here on your screen. It's within the Tribute North development, which was formerly known as the iBrands development. Tribute purchased that in 2021. And this is now the second submission that Tribute has made the first submission since taking over the application. And because they have come in with a revised plan and a revised concept for the subdivision, we are going back through and doing a separate second public meeting relating to that development. But for now, this is specifically for the sales center, which is proposed to be developed on the northern part of the property. It's approximately halfway between Highway 35 on the west and the bend where Thunderbridge turns into Angeline on the east. You can see it on the north side there, the red square. So it's a temporary use by law, 3-year period. It's anticipated that the other proposed applications for the official plan, zoning bylaw, and subdivision for the greater development will be considered within that 3-year time frame, and thus when that bylaw is passed, it would then supersede this temporary use one. And so the temporary use would just be to give them this use and ability to construct the sales center on the property. So this is the concept plan here. They're proposing a sales center. As you can see, an entrance coming off of Thunderbridge Road on the north side of the property. And then in the future Street A, which will be known as McKay Avenue, coming up from the Craft subdivision, which had just gone before this one. That's the main Street A that runs north-south through the development up to from all the way from Colburn up to Thunderbridge. So they're proposing a future potential entrance onto there, at which point they would then close this entrance here, most likely. And the sales center would be the building here. They provided the parking area to the north of it, and they are proposing 4 model single detached homes and a semi-detached home, so 2 units here on the northwest of the 6 units that are proposed there. So what would happen with these units is they will basically be built dry with no services connecting to them right now. And then when the future subdivision phase gets to this point, then they would become part of the subdivision and would be serviced at that time. And so then they would turn around and instead of being model homes, they would then turn into full homes that somebody would purchase. I've also just provided here the concept plans, just showing what the sales center is proposed to look like. So a couple elevations here for you. So it's basically just a single-story building, and will front on to Thunderbridge Road. And since writing the original report, when we were anticipating that this would go to the June 8th Planning Advisory Committee meeting, MTO has provided comments to confirm that all of their stormwater issues have been addressed. So they've confirmed they have no issues. Comments were received from Curve Lake and provided to the applicant. There were a couple public queries about this, most of them related to possible upgrades to Thunderbridge, Angeline, but I believe that those queries were really more related to the larger subdivision application, so not specifically this. We did have as noted in the planning report, there was a traffic study submitted and reviewed by the city, and no issues found in terms of access to the site based on the traffic. So MTO didn't have issue with it and the city didn't have issue with it. On that basis, I am respectfully recommending that it proceed on to council with the draft bylaw as attached. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ian. Committee, any questions of Ian at this time? Okay, seeing none. Does the applicant, owner, or agent on behalf of the applicant, owner wish to speak to the application?
Yeah, we do have a short presentation here as well. Ian, that was an amazing summary kind of our application, but I can go through quickly our presentation as well. Perfect. So yeah, my name is Paul Watson with Tribute Communities. Here to get your feedback on the sales office. I'll be joined by Jeff Sully, who'll be commenting on the details of the full proposal of the plan of subdivision later. But we'll just get into quickly the sales office here. Next slide. So I'll go through a quick intro on Tribute, talk about the property, the location, the sales office plan, and what the approvals we require are, and what our next steps are going to be in the process. Next slide. So a quick background on Tribute. We're an award-winning builder, over 35 years of experience in home building, 35,000 homes built through the GTA. We have experience in infill, greenfield, high and low-rise product, and we're recognized for our commitment to building communities and not just houses. These are some of our recent projects that we have underway, and in every community we enter, we look to engage local community and create those partnerships throughout the process. We also had an informal public meeting back in May that was well attended, so we're excited to start here in Lindsay. Next slide. As mentioned by Ian, you can see our subdivision is located in the northwest section of Lindsay along Highway 35 at Thunder Bridge, and the sales office will be at the very north of the site for best visibility and access. Next slide. So you saw a little bit of the site plan there. I just wanted to kind of go through it. There'll be more of a close-up version on the next slides, but we want to see how it flows into the model homes. The block is 0.67 hectares, and there'll be a 371 square meter office building with 22 stalls, 1 loading and 1 accessible. The servicing will be via buried water and sewage tanks along the western portion of the structure. We submitted a servicing memo and plan as part of our approvals. And as you can see behind, we have the 5 model homes with a 30, 36, 40, and 50-foot lot. And also a semi-detached product will be there as well. And as Ian mentioned, there'll be dry models and connected as the approvals continue. Next slide. This shows a little bit of details on the sales office, the temporary entrance off Thunder Bridge, where we find the best visibility and access for a temporary road, and then our future entrance off Street A once the subdivision has been approved. Next slide. And this will show you the model home row. It'll be a fenced off area. It will be a fenced off area until the 2 roads that it's facing have begun construction in the later phases. You'll enter through the sales office and have access through the north side of the site. Next slide. The approvals we're looking to get today will be an amendment to the zoning bylaw to permit the sales office, the model homes, implementation of the parking standard, and building height allowances that have been described in the staff report that you received. Next slide. Lastly, we wanted to show you a little bit of our interiors and exteriors of some of our other sales offices that have been highly awarded. This will look a lot like the bottom left, which is our sales office in Coburg that was completed last year. Next slide. And lastly, in terms of the next steps, our hopes is that we'll approve the zoning bylaw amendments requested, and we'll proceed to site plan approvals and building permits throughout the rest of the summer. And hopefully construction can start in the fall for a completion early next year, with sales starting sometime in 2023. Thank you so much for your time. That's it for me.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Committee, any questions of Mr. Watson at this time? Okay, seeing none, is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak specifically to the sales center? Anyone from the public wishing to speak specifically to the sales center? If third and final call. Anybody from the public wishing to speak to the sales center? Okay, seeing and hearing none. Committee, there is a recommendation before you. What are your wishes? Councillor O'Reilly?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I recommend the report amend the op zoning bylaw 93-30 at 460 Thunderbridge Road, Lindsay, Tribute Lindsay, limited application D06 2022-013 be received, that the zoning bylaw amendment substantially in the form attached as Appendix D to report plan to 2022-013 be referred to council for approval and adoption, and the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute any documents required for the approval of this application.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Dunn. Any discussion? Calling the question. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Moving into 3.2, Plan 2022-036. Applications to amend the Ops and Lindsay official plans and respective zoning bylaws 93-30 and 2000-75, together with a draft plan of subdivision at 460 Thunderbridge Road, Lindsay. Tribute Lindsay 2 Limited, north site location. Ian Walker.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So this application is specifically the Tribute North application. As I just noted in the previous presentation, the Tribute North application, this is a second submission. So the original submission was made by iBrands Developments in 2020. Tribute purchased the property in 2021 and was in discussions with city staff as well, looking at revising the original applications. And so they have done that. So they've designed the site for Tribute North to work in tandem with their site Tribute South. So this would basically be the remainder of the development lands in the Jennings Creek development community area with, as you can see, some of the streets there down on the south property being the Craft development at Colborne and Highway 35. That was kind of the first big application here. Tribute South then is the middle of the two, 3 large blocks, and Tribute North being the third block in the north there. So as you may recall, back in 2018, 2019, the Ravines of Lindsay subdivision came through and there were some red line changes to it. That's the development here noted with Connolly Road coming through and into the Tribute South development. So it's all the lands on the pocket of lands between Angeline and Jennings Creek where it flows through the Tribute North property. So this is the second submission as noted. And so this here is the phasing plan that Tribute has provided and kind of gives you an overview of the entire development. Originally, iBrands was proposing to develop the southwest quadrant of the lands, being what's shown here as phase 3. And now with the revised applications, Tribute is looking at phase 1 being the south, we'll call it the easternmost portion of the site, and perhaps I guess south and east portion of the Tribute North development lands, identified with the 1 on the phase plan here. This would also include a stormwater pond, and they are proposing a wetland compensation area to offset some wetland removal elsewhere on the site. And they are proposing 2 wetland compensation areas overall. Both of them are adjacent to stormwater management sites as well, from a perspective of keeping all those natural areas kind of in along the same corridors, and as well providing the Jennings Creek floodplain area and the natural lands along Jennings Creek and the Ops number 1 drain as a natural area, which will have some future trails and that through it for connectivity to other parts of Lindsay. As you would be aware, the development Woods of Jennings Creek on the east side of Angeline has some trails through the ravine area in that development, and these will connect through to that. So this Tribute North is proposed in 5 phases, and with the first phase starting at the eastern portion of the site there, and would be accessed by the new road that would come in opposite the south entrance to Springdale Gardens. So this is the proposed draft plan. We have a central block here where they're proposing a larger park with a school block to the south of it. And those are, of course, purposely put side by side so that there's, some continuity from a programming perspective where the school can utilize that park space and vice versa. This is a bit more closer look here at the development. So you can see here the parkland in that central space, parkland along the north side of Jennings Creek. And there will be one proposed crossing going into the south development as well. I've provided a couple additional drawings for you here taken from the urban design guidelines. So what you're seeing here on your screen is the central point of the Tribute North development. They've provided basically a 400 meter and an 800 meter radius. So this is what's considered a 5-minute walking distance here in this yellow circle and a 10-minute walking distance here in the green circle. So you can see it's anticipated that from the central location of this site, you can reach all of the tribute lands really within a 10-minute walk from that portion of the site. This is, of course, being the area where the school and the park are proposed. So, and just one last sketch I wanted to provide here just to show some connectivity in terms of the roads and in terms of more of an active transportation role here. These are all kind of the proposed street patterns with the sidewalk layouts, and you can see along the main north-south spine, they're proposing a 3-meter multi-use path on the east side here, entirely up through the site, and one coming out to Angeline, and as well then a 1.8 meter sidewalk on the opposite side of the street through that area as well. So this is, of course, a second public meeting for this one. All of the landowners that had originally identified an interest in the original application were provided the notice of this, just so that they were aware that their original comments to I-Brands were taken into consideration when Tribute was coming forward with this proposal. So for consistency, the Tribute has kept the Biglieri Group as their principal planning firm, and so they have continued on and taken the information from the original I-Brands submission and any concerns that were brought forward through that, and they've tried to incorporate those into this submission, pardon me, so that they have a excuse me. Sorry about that. So that they have everything hopefully addressed for the neighbors' concerns. So these applications are, of course, being recommended to be referred back to staff to allow further review and processing. And I will end my presentation with that. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Ian. Committee, any questions of Ian at this point? Councillor Dunn.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of questions. The in-cut over by Angeline Street opposite of Springdale Gardens, we intend on punching a road through there, or they intend on punching a road through there?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that is correct. So there's they're proposing 2 accesses onto Angeline. There's the south access, which is opposite Springdale South. And then there is a north proposed access just south of the bend in Angeline, where it turns to the west and becomes Thunderbridge Road. So the city is also having a third-party peer review the traffic study as well in terms of all those access points. And so there will be additional information provided through that review to confirm that all of the proposed entrances and that will meet the requirements that are necessary and or any, traffic improvements that might be necessary to make those access points possible.
Okay, and my other question is the north-south road that runs down the middle I get a lot of calls about speed, and it looks like it's going to be, or has the potential of being a raceway. Do we have any comments yet as far as how we plan on calming the traffic on that road?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't know if we do have any comments yet as far as traffic calming measures, but certainly we will have specific speed requirements and other things like that can be incorporated in the design so that when the street is built, it would meet whatever the current requirements are.
Yeah, well, speed requirements and enforcement for me are two different things. In a conversation I had with the engineer about another road, he got talking about things like raised intersections, which is just a really big speed bump in the middle of a road, which would actually, without enforcement, would cause vehicles to slow down. Going forward, you might as well let the developers know that will be a major concern of mine, and I'd rather deal with it now at the development stage than have to deal with it through our police officers do all they can with the resources they have, and I'm not confident that they have enough resources to police that road on a regular daily basis to prevent speeding. And I mean, it will be a major concern going forward, and might as well put it on the table right now.
Thank you for providing those comments, and certainly we can take that into consideration.
Any further questions of Ian at this time? Member Brumwell?
Ian, through you, Mr. Chair. The north exit onto Angeline is right at the start of the curve. If Angeline has to be reconfigured from a traffic safety point of view, who pays for that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, if there were improvements that were required as part of this development, then those would be costs that the developer would end up paying for those upgrades. So if there were improvements that were required, but not specifically because of this development, then that would be something the city might look at a project. But when it's specifically tied to a development, it would be the project that would be bearing the costs for any of those necessary changes.
Any further questions of Ian at this time? Okay, seeing none. Does the applicant owner or agent on behalf of the applicant owner wish to speak to the application?
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff Solly, and I represent Tribute Communities, and we are the developer proponent for this plan of subdivision. We have a short presentation, some of which has already been covered off by Ian and his presentation, but perhaps it could be loaded up on the screen for others to follow along at home and in the council chambers. So we could just skip right to the background context, because a lot of the first couple of slides have already been addressed by Paul in his presentation as well. So there are two public meetings scheduled for today, one for Tribute, what we call Tribute North, and the second is Tribute South. And very imaginative names, as you can tell. But because both lands are being planned comprehensively, I'll be speaking kind of to both properties, but also mindful of some of the comments and questions that councillors have been raised on Tribute North already. So as noted, the lands are in northwest Lindsay, and we've acquired lands from iBrands in August of 2020, and we also purchased the Orsi lands to the south at around the same time. And then as we could go to the next slide, just on the timelines. So we've been working with staff in taking comments from the previous iBrands draft plan, both community comments and staff comments and agency comments, and incorporating those into a revised concept plan. So that is what is before you today. The intention is that we are going to be proceeding towards an approval perhaps later this year or early next year after the election. So we would like council to be in a position to approve that soon. Again, we continue to work with staff on comments as they come through. And then ultimately, we'll be seeking permission to construct on the site sometime next year. But obviously, we have to work through agency comments as well as comments from the public while making this plan work for everyone. Next slide, please. So the lands are within the approved settlement boundary of the Lindsay urban area, and that development in this part of Lindsay has been planned for many years. So what we're really focusing on is how and the development will happen and what it will look like. We will have to work through the existing policy structures of the Kawartha Lakes official plan, the Lindsay secondary plan, as well as other policy documents such as the ops drainage plan, the Northwest Trunk sanitary sewer scheme, and so on. Next slide, please. So working through the required planning approvals, as Ian has noted, we're going to need an official plan amendment through the ops OP as well as the Lindsay Kawartha Lakes official plan amendment in order to implement the Planning Act approvals necessary for this project. Also required our zoning bylaw amendment and a draft plan of subdivision approval. Next slide, please. Yes, next slide. And next slide. Thanks. So in developing the structure of the plan, keeping in mind the necessary approvals that were required and the policy framework within which we are working with, there are a number of considerations that we want to attend to. There's the initial development constraints of the property. They're really highlighted by the property boundaries itself, the existing Jennings Creek, and associated wetlands within the subject lands, and Highway 35 and other surrounding land uses. So they all have a bearing on how we structure the plan of subdivision. Next slide, please. Taking those constraints into account, then we start to build a framework for the plan itself, where we look at the location of the collector streets that connect the subdivision itself to the existing community and beyond. And we also have to take into account how we connect north to south and cross Jennings Creek in the most appropriate area. Next slide, please. Once we've got a basic framework of the major road connections, then we also have to take into account the major parks and open spaces and how they're located. Stormwater management ponds are located in the low areas of the lands, and because they need to outlet to a creek, they're located in the vicinity of Jennings Creek. We have two proposed wetlands in the north. They are to provide compensation for existing wetlands in the area that are proposed to be relocated. So we still want to maintain the natural heritage and hydrogeologic function that those wetlands currently provide to the area, but in relocating them, we still maintain that overall hydrogeologic function, but at the same time, we end up with a more efficient use of the land in the area. And again, those techniques are being reviewed through staff and the Conservation Authority and other agencies as well. We also have parks and open spaces as well for everyone's enjoyment. And again, we're focusing on those ones being connected and located in central locations for ease of access and use for all residents, not just the new residents in the Tribute subdivision, but also residents in Lindsay itself. Next slide, please. Then we layer on top of that all of our active transportation and local connections And that's not only the road work where cars and trucks can traverse and within and without this the community, but also multi-use paths, walkway blocks, trails, and so on and so forth. So we're looking at a multimodal uh, community here. People have lots of choices and opportunities as to how they move within and without the proposed subdivision. And we're going to take advantage of trail connections through natural areas such as Jennings Creek, the stormwater management ponds, as well as on the street itself, as Ian previously noted, through the multi-use paths significantly located on the north and south major roads and the east-west major roads as well. Next slide, please. And then we then finally end up with the built form as sort of the last consideration. And again, what we're focusing on here is a greenfield development, which is low-rise development consisting of singles, semis, townhouses, some condominium townhouses, and a small amount of commercial located strategically adjacent to Highway 35 at the proposed Sylvester Road extension and at the north end of the site at the proposed intersection of Street A and Thunderbridge Road. And we'll also have schools as well, located one in the north and one in the south as well. So that really kind of forms the overall structure. The next slide. The next two slides are really just a reflection of the formal draft plans that have been submitted in support of these applications. Next slide, please. And then the next one after that. So just some key stats really for the north property. We're looking at a total build out of between 1,500 to 1,800 units. We've provided some flexibility in the draft plan to reflect changes to the lot fabric as we move throughout the full build out of the community, as you would probably expect. Markets change, trends and styles change, and so there may be more desire for larger product in 1 year, in one phase, and maybe smaller product in another year in another phase. So again, we provide that flexibility within the plan, and that's applied for both the north and the south lands. As I say, in the north, we proposed a 16,000 square foot approximate convenience commercial type opportunity that will likely be built towards the end of the full build out of the community. In the south, we're looking at density or unit count in a range of 800 to just around 900 units. Again, we provide that flexibility in the draft plan to allow for that. We'll be providing the necessary parks, stormwater management ponds, and in the case of the Tribute South lands, 2 commercial blocks, one on either side of the intersection of Sylvester and Highway 35. On the urban design side, some next slides, please. We're next, yeah, thank you. We're looking at then how does this community interface with the existing community. So we're mindful of making sure that the housing types, lot types are in line with the existing lots that back onto the subdivision. So we'll be looking at larger lots that match or are very close to the existing lot sizes in Lindsay. We'll also be providing, as I say, road connections to Angeline and to the existing community. I will speak to 2 connections in particular, Richard and David, are current stub connections that we have proposed road connections to. I'm sure you'll hear from some of the residents who are concerned with the south property as to how they feel about that. But again, from our point of view, what we're simply reflecting is the existing connections that have been provided historically. Sylvester also is proposed to connect and carry through to the subdivision and ultimately over towards Highway 35. And to the north, as I say, you've got connection opportunities onto Angeline and Thunderbridge Road. there is a traffic study that we have prepared that discusses the operational aspects of all those connections. And we continue to work through with staff on that study, ensuring that operationally and so on, that we meet all of the town's criteria for operations and safety and sight lines and so on, and speed control and so on and so forth. So that's so we're aware of, and we want to respect how we connect and interface with the existing community. And again, I'm sure we'll hear from some of the residents with their questions and comments on that as well. Next slide, please. Again, just on built form, we continue to work through with our architect on the actual product for this community, but again, it will be a mix of singles and semis and townhouses. Some of the units that we are looking at will be designed with an integrated secondary suite, so that provides an opportunity for whether that's a multi-generational living or a rental opportunity, or other sort of this form of more affordable housing opportunity. So we're looking at integrating that into our built form. No high rises are proposed. It was all a grade related product. So we're hoping that we'll be able to introduce that those house designs in due course. There will be an urban design and architectural control guidelines to ensure that the housing designs and streetscape work and are sympathetic, so that again, we want to make sure that everything looks a consistent look and feel throughout the community itself. And so there will be, again, working with staff on that aspect of the design. Next slide, please. Reflecting Councillor Dunn's concern about traffic speed and traffic calming, and Councillor Dunn is absolutely correct, and especially when you look at the plan view of the north-south road, I think that is quite a long road. And so one opportunity that we would like to explore with staff is to, rather than create a landing strip or a raceway for that look, we would like to introduce the medians into that right of way, similar to what is already in place on Victoria Avenue in Lindsay. We think that will provide, a way of calming traffic, and also providing an opportunity to introduce more trees into the right of way, and at the same time, as I say, provide kind of a nice sort of more visual feeling as you're going north and south. We're also looking at that cross section in all the collector roads that we're proposing, the ones that connect into Sylvester and the ones that connect into Angeline as well. So again, we'll work through with staff on the details of that, but definitely we are aware of and acknowledge that traffic calming will be a significant factor that we need to pay attention to. Next slide, please. Next. So as I say, we're looking to be draft approved in early 2023. In terms of the timing for sales and so on, again, we'll have our sales center construction begin later this summer, and we'll be open and ready to go to sales once we're draft approved, and we're looking at this sometime in 2023 for that. As far as the phasing of the subdivision itself, you can see some preliminary phasing. It follows a logical extension of services and road connections and so on. As I say, the phasing itself may be subject to further review as time proceeds, but that right now seems to make sense in terms of the sequence and full build out. The next steps, I think the next slides we can skip. I think really it's just a matter of continue to work through with staff and the agencies who have been, I want to commend staff and the agencies for making themselves available on a regular basis and working together. I think it's been a very excellent collaborative process so far. So I very much appreciate all the work that's gone to date, and we look forward to continuing on that journey. But in the meantime, we're welcoming any questions and comments from councillors and from the public in order to make this plan the best possible plan for the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Committee, any questions to Mr. Sully at this point? Mayor Latham?
Thank you. Thanks, Jeff, for your presentation. A couple of questions. Your maps are kind of small, so it might be there, but I'm having trouble seeing it. The bridge is obviously the only connection between the north and south over Jennings Creek. And with all the, trail, active transportation plans, I would hope, and I'm sure you're doing it, that when we consider that bridge, that early in the process, there's an opportunity to, nice wide sidewalks, perhaps bike lane over the bridge, and not just a bridge constructed for cars, and traffic. Obviously easier to do early than to try and add something on later, but I think we're all trying to create a community here that is, perhaps, I compliment you on the trails and some of the sidewalks and such like that. When you talk about a median down that road, perhaps there's an opportunity to look at a median, that median being for bike lanes, right down the middle of the road, as opposed to maintaining the grass on Victoria Avenue is an ongoing concern. So just, ways to look at it a little bit differently. And I think you've got an opportunity here to create a unique community. So just a comment, just want to make sure that early in the process that we're sort of looking at all the options to maybe do something a little bit different. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, Mayor Latham. We are looking at ensuring that we've got options to get through and around the community, and that north-south connection, especially over Jennings Creek, we are getting into some of the details now. We will be providing a design brief to staff describing that in more detail. We'd like to establish that location now, so that together with the draft plan, we know that the Street A, is not going to shift left or right or east or west along Jennings Creek because of some, either a natural heritage feature or engineering matter. So we're getting into the details now, and definitely walkability, bike lanes, all of that will be part of the bridge design, and will be continued along with the road itself. So the bridge is not going to be a bottleneck for that.
Thank you.
Councillor Dunn?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of quick comments and then a question. Victoria Avenue is an example of what doesn't work. So to do it again would be for me, would be a bad choice. Victoria Avenue is one of the ones we get, not the majority, but it's certainly a good portion of our complaints about speeding on. So I wouldn't want to recreate that. That's my comment. And just because I can't find it on my map, the new street, Connolly, that's, is that being proposed for a hookup as well? I just can't find it on the map here.
It is proposed to be connected, and yes, I acknowledge that the drawings are on the presentation are because there's such a large area, we've got lots to connect to, but yes, it is proposed to connect to what we call Street I, on our Tribute South lands. So at the northeast corner of the subject plan of subdivision, it's where Street I connects to the northeast. So hopefully that helps orient you there.
Okay, and my question is, and I'm not taking a position on this yet, because I haven't seen the final drafts and plans, and I know you are doing serious consideration on the both Richard and David. If in fact the roads didn't go through there, would that be land you could recover for building and actually put homes in there? Because that would be a substantial size lot. Would that be an advantage that might overweigh, like one advantage overweigh the other advantage?
Yeah, Mr. Dunn, your observation is correct. If David and Richard do not go through, it would not be a horrible outcome for us from a development point of view. I think there are, it would be still keep in mind maybe a pedestrian connection or something like that because we want to provide connections for the community, not just simply, us and them as far as, development and existing residents. So we want to provide potentially a pedestrian connection. And I think there was an engineering comment that we received with water main looping. They'd like to ensure that the water mains loop, again, from a technical point of view, there's an advantage to that as well from an overall functionality. So those are things that we're aware of, that we are we've heard comments loud and clear at the May open house about the vehicular connection of Richard and David. And we're aware of those, and we're already talking about how we are going to respond to those.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that comment. I didn't know you were along that route, but in my position, I'm always trying to keep as many people happy as possible. And keeping the developers happy is one of those people I want to keep happy, because you'll come back and build more homes for us.
Okay, so I just wanted to try and keep these three applications straight. Right now, we're dealing with the north site, and the discussion about David and Richard is part of the next file, just so that there's no confusion. So let's try and keep this ship on the straight and narrow. Did you have any further questions, Mayor Latham, or that's the direction you were going to go in? Any other questions of committee of Mr. Solly, Councillor O'Reilly?
Well, no, it's probably just a comment that we can reserve the questions for the south as well, too. But I just want to say a thank you to Tribute Homes for coming to our community and investing the kind of money in building 2,600 potential homes in our community. We've never had a development this size in our community in our lifetime. So, and I hear some good reports about the other, especially North Oshawa. So, thank you, Jeff, to you and Tribute Homes for coming and investing in our community.
Any further questions from committee of Mr. Sully at this point? Okay, seeing none. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak specifically to the north site? Anyone from the
yes, Lee Veach. I have a couple of questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, through the chair, just wondering how water pressure will be affected by the development of these new homes affecting the existing properties.
Okay, so if you want to ask your questions, we're going to go through anybody that wants to speak, and then Mr. Sully will have an opportunity to respond after everything, just so that there's no duplications or anything. Is that the only question you wanted to ask, Mr. Veach?
No, I have a couple of others.
Okay, so go ahead.
The traffic one. Where is it here? I heard you talk about on the Sunrise development that the development fees were waived. Were there any waiving of development fees for either of these projects, north or south? And they specified that the modifications, if required after the MTO review to Angeline, are required, that costs would go to Tribute with anything that was caused by the development, and anything that wasn't caused by the development would be charged back to, I guess, the taxpayer people of Lindsay. At what portion of Angeline would you consider being affected by these developments? Would it be the entire distance of Angeline from Colburn up, or just around the perimeter of the development on the north project? And my final question is, the drawings, it's very difficult to read, so I'm not exactly sure what the light blue colored one on the north side of Jenny's Creek is, if someone could specify what that is beside the stormwater one.
Okay, thanks very much, Mr. Veach, and we'll get you some answers for that. Is there anyone else from the public wishing to speak to the north side application?
We had one other speaker scheduled, Mr. Hannon.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Yes, so I'm a resident on Angeline Street, been there since 1983, and my concern is going to be the traffic flow on Angeline. Do you anticipate, I guess in the future, is Angeline Street's going to go to 4 lanes? And if that was going to happen, it's probably going to have to move to the west. And do you anticipate adding any auxiliary roads, like let's say Orchard Park or Springdale, that would get the traffic straight out Highway 36, so all that traffic wouldn't have to come down Angeline Street necessarily? For example, somebody wanting to go to Peterborough. Do you, another question, do you anticipate another crossing over the Skugog River to help alleviate some of the traffic? Like the Wellington Street Bridge is so busy right now. Like again, with Angeline, I can see a huge increase in traffic already, and it's and with the RVs going there now too, and so on and so forth. But I guess that's about it. My biggest concern is traffic, being a resident on the street already.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Hannon. Is there anyone else from the public wishing to speak to the North Side application? Any further speakers? You've got no one else, Sarah? Okay, if there's no one else, committee, do you have any questions of any of the deputants? Mr. Sully, would you like an opportunity to respond to some of the questions and concerns?
Yes, please. Thank you. I took notes, and hopefully I got them correct here. So, Mr. Beach, this water pressure question. So, yes, we will be ensuring that the water mains that come into the proposed subdivision will be looped in a way that water pressure is maintained, so that there's no loss of pressure. There's no issue with security if you just kind of have a single feed off of a main and it accidentally gets cut or whatever. There's always going to be security supply. So that is addressed through our technical engineering reports. They are currently under review by staff right now, but that is the proposal. With regards to waiving of development fees, Tribute's not asking for the waiving of development fees. We expect to pay all of the fees that are associated with this, development charges, application fees, and so on. What the developer to the south was asking for was, rather than double counting a security for works that are undertaken, that they in fact just have a more rationalized security deposit system. So it's not a fee per se, it's just more to ensure that you do what you say you're going to do, and you do it properly. If you don't do it properly, the city has the financial resources to come in and do it properly themselves. But but maybe more detailed than you care to know, but we do not expect to request any waiving of development fees. Modifications for Angeline. So any work that we do on Angeline where our proposed road access comes out to the intersections at the north and the south end, and similarly on Thunder Bridge Road, we'll be definitely be responsible for those costs. There are, and this kind of gets into Mr. Hannon's question too about traffic. We are doing and have undertaken a traffic study with regards to the impact of all the traffic that's expected to be generated in the full build out of Lindsay. There are development charges, or also known as impact fees, that the new residents pay and developers pay those costs, but the new residents ultimately pay for those costs that are to pay for works like road widenings, intersection improvements, signalization projects for projects that are deemed to be growth related, but aren't necessarily immediately adjacent to subdivision. I'll take, for example, the intersection of Angeline and Colburn. As you probably know, it operates not great right now. With future traffic expected, it's probably going to get even busier. So there are funds being collected by the town to fund construction of those development impacted works. So, so that's kind of the framework for funding for works associated immediately with the development and for growth related impacts that are not immediately but are sort of within the community of Lindsay itself. So hopefully, again, that gives you some sense of how that gets paid for. And then with the colors of the drawings, there's a light blue color. I think, Mr. Veach, you're asking about adjacent to the proposed stormwater management pond. That is the proposed wetland compensation block that is proposed in that. So that's just east of the stormwater management block on the north property. With questions from Mr. Hannon, is the traffic on Angeline, will it be widened to 4 lanes? I can't speak to that. I'm not sure if that is going to be required as a result of the development, or perhaps maybe with the full build out of the community, it will happen. But again, those types of things are going to be subject to separate studies and separate discussions. And as I say, a lot of the funding for that is being collected through these development charges. I can't speak to questions about the crossing over Scugog River. I'm not familiar enough with that situation. So hopefully that helps with some of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sully, and be thankful that you're not familiar with the Scugog River crossings. Ian, is there anything you would like to respond to?
Thank you. I don't think I have much to add. I think probably more relating to Mike's questions about Angeline. Our engineering and corporate assets department is continuously monitoring the existing traffic situations and that within the existing developed parts of Lindsay as well. And I am aware that there are some projects proposed along Angeline further south, but they're specific to the existing situations. And again, that would continue to be the case here. Anything further north up there, if it's not driven specific to this development, would be something that the city would be looking at undertaking later on as we get perhaps more intense development within Lindsay as well, because there are other developments proposed, certainly. Throughout Lindsay, there's still lands in the southwest, southeast that haven't fully built out. There's still some increasing density, perhaps in the downtown area. So there's a lot of factors that have to be taken into consideration in looking at that. But certainly, I believe the city likely already has a fairly substantial amount of land. Angeline's considered an arterial road, so it is typically it should be a 26-meter wide right-of-way. If we already have 26 meters width through that area, then we would already have all the land necessary to upgrade the road, perhaps to a 4-lane cross-section. I'm not going to get into the whole detailed design or any of that information, but just noting that generally that should be sufficient. So I don't think I really have anything further to add beyond that.
Okay, thanks very much, Ian. Committee, there's a recommendation before you. What are your wishes? Councillor Dunn?
I forgot you actually want me to read it in. I wouldn't have got my hand up quite so quick. All right, so I'll move that the report plan 2022-036. No, that's not the right one. Yes, it is, yep. Amend the Ops Lindsay official plan in respective zoning bylaws 93-30 and 2000-75 together with a draft plan of subdivision at 460 Thunderbridge Road, Lindsay-Tribute, Lindsay 2 Limited, application D01-2020-006, D06-2020-024 and D05-2020-001 be received, and that the plan 2020-036 respectively, the applications D01-2020-006, D06-2020-024 and D05-2020 001 be referred back to staff to address any issues raised through the public consultation process and for further review and processing until such time that all comments have been received from all circulated agencies and city departments, and that any comments and concerns be addressed.
Thank you. Seconder, Member Brumwell. Any discussion? Seeing none, calling the question. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Okay, so we'll move into item 3.3, Plan 2022-037, applications to amend the Lindsay Official Plan and Zoning Bylaw 2000-75, together with a draft plan of subdivision at vacant land on Highway 35, Lindsay Tribute, Lindsay 1 Limited, south site location. And Ian, you're up again.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. All right, hopefully my voice holds up a little better this time. So this application, or these applications relate to the lands here identified as Tribute South, which, as you've heard Jeff in the previous presentation mention, was formerly referred to as the Orsi lands. Tribute purchased them from the Orsis in around 2020, 2021, somewhere in that time frame. So this land is the parcel that stretches from Highway 35 in the west over to the existing Linwood, Richard David drives in the east, Sylvester Drive, just touches on St. Joseph Road at the southeast corner. And it straddles basically the Tribute North development, former Ibrands, on the north side of Jennings Creek, and the Craft, or now called Sugarwood, subdivision to the south, which runs between Colburn and the Tribute South development. Again, here, just showing kind of the overall plan of the development as it relates to the entire context of the area. So this being Jennings Creek through here and the Ops municipal drain, they are one and the same at this point here. And they are showing to keep this green space basically around the creek and the drain there. Stormwater pond here, stormwater along, kind of straddling along Highway 35. Both developments here have also provided for a Highway 35 road widening, same as Sugarwood in the south has done. And this development does already have lands designated general commercial, kind of at that intersection of what will be the Sylvester Drive extension and Highway 35. So the proposal here is to amend the official plan policies specifically as it relates to some of the permitted uses there. That would allow for essentially a grocery store on one of these two parcels, most likely the southern parcel here. We do have some, you'll notice a difference in colors here. With the lots kind of backing on to Linwood along the east side of the development are kind of in the light yellow color. Those would be the wider low density development lots, so single detached dwellings on kind of larger frontages. So they've done that purposely to coordinate with what's already built, the existing built form on the development to the east. They did also note as well, I'll just point out right here, the street eye, at the north edge here, just east of the green area, is the connection of or extension of Connolly Road, which runs through the ravines of Lindsay development out to Angeline. So that's one of the proposed connections. The other two being Richard and David Drive here, and a connection at Sylvester to the existing Sylvester. They are proposing an extension to the Sylvester Park to make it larger as well. And again, another similar to the Tribute North development, a park and school back to back along kind of those main collector roads. So the north-south Street A, the east-west Sylvester extension. And then most of the development you'll notice here in purple, and then you get some kind of more orange color over in around the commercial developments closer to Highway 35. So that would be kind of the smaller frontage developments here, and that in closer proximity to those commercial uses there. So again, here's the proposed draft plan, which would create all the blocks and streets of the development. Of course, one of the things that Jeff had noted in his presentation on the Tribute North, and what's proposed for both of these developments is that they would be creating them, the subdivision in blocks, and then through registration of the M plan later on, would have the exact lot fabric through the registration for each of the lots within that block. So the way that would work is that they'd have a minimum and maximum range of units that they could fit within each block. And then there's an overall count that they have to make sure that they don't exceed the number total. So it would allow for them to cap out at whatever the maximum is for the development. This is again, just kind of a color iteration here of what you saw previously, hopefully a little bit better for your viewing here. You can see there's the Connolly extension into the existing ravines of Lindsay development. We do have the one north-south crossing over Jennings Creek, and that they're only proposing one. Again, because it's going to be a bridge, it is a substantial piece of infrastructure. So you typically don't want to have too many of those because once the city does inherit that later on, there becomes maintenance costs as well with bridges. So so there's really only that one main north-south connection between these two developments here, but there is some proposed connections within and to the adjacent developments as well. And again, providing that map showing kind of the walking distances. Most of the Tribute South development is within a 5-minute walk of the central part of the site. So that would be kind of that intersection of Sylvester and Street A, or McKay as it'll be known, coming north from the Sugarwood development. And again, finally, same plan here, showing the north-south, east-west routing of those collector streets, and then the sidewalk patterns and other connections through between to try to improve, walkability of the community from an active transportation perspective. So we have to date received a number of comments from the public. I'll just note that. I'm just going to quickly now go through as well and just list all of those. So I do have a list of all the interested parties, which we have been monitoring continuously. Specific to this development, the Tribute South one, we've had a number of individuals, Ashley Yearwood, Anna Mina, Leslie and Mark Fillets. I'll apologize if I mispronounce your name. Jen Kilborn, Don Holbrook, Rob McPherson, Karen Kay, Carl Eakin, Donna Campbell and Paul Hill, Jim D, Kyle Dubourdieu, Carl Winsky, Cindy Baltree, Joe and Maureen McCall, Donna Campbell, Paul Hill and Verna Curtin, Modi Taliani, Deanne Priest, Bill Charlton, Ivan Reynolds, and Laura Fisher. So far were all the names that I've had comments received. I believe almost all, if not all of those related specifically to the connections at Richard Avenue and David Drive between Tribute and the existing development. So I just wanted to note that all of those comments have been received. They are part of the public record and the concerns have been heard. So I wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that. So. And that concludes my presentation. As I noted in the report, again, this is the first public meeting. We're collecting information, trying to answer as many questions as we can, and those questions that we can't answer, we will take back and work with and try to get responses for people so that they understand, or have answers to their questions before coming forward with a further recommendation at some point in the future. So, thank you.
Thanks very much, Ian. Does the applicant owner or agent on behalf of the applicant owner wish to speak to the application?
Hi, I'm not going to repeat, obviously, the presentation I made before. Ian did an excellent job in outlining the plan of subdivision. I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee or the public may have. Thank you.
Thanks. Committee, any questions of Ian or Mr. Sully? Mayor Latham?
Hi, thanks, Ian. And Jeff, just a quick question. When you've got your north and south development, and I noticed you've got the different phases, obviously, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, 4, will you at the same time be developing phase 1 in the south and phase 1 in the north? Is that the plan, to sort of develop the whole property one phase at a time, or you plan to do those individually?
Plan is to have both the north and the south proceed concurrently.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Dunn?
Yeah, just one quick question. When I'm looking at Street A, are those roundabouts at all the intersections? They just, I can't tell because of the size of the map. It's on page 68 of the report.
Roundabouts are not proposed.
Okay, that's
at this
fine.
time.
I was just looking at them and I couldn't figure out what they were, and I didn't know. Okay, I'm good.
Councillor O'Reilly?
Yeah, I believe Councillor Dunn brought it up earlier. Did you kind of give a conclusive, I realize this is just a gather information session today on the Richard Avenue entrance, and I realize Sylvester's part of it, and there's a number of deputations here today, which kind of reflects the letters we got that Ian read out. So did you have a further statement, or is that just still under consideration, or what's the status? Might answer a lot of the questions now.
Yeah, all the connections are under review. We still need to hear from the traffic consultant hired on behalf of the town as well. But I can tell you that we have heard the community's message.
Any further questions from committee? Okay. Anyone from the public wishing to speak to the south application? Go ahead, if you want to come up to the front and...
We're not yet. We're not ready yet.
Thank you. Thank you. I intend to respectfully suggest to council and the committees today that the proposed plan to incorporate the existing heritage-style subdivision community of David Drive, Hopkins, Richard, Linwood Avenues to vehicle traffic access to the newly proposed tribute subdivision community serves no practical benefit, but indeed shall functionally dismantle a valuable heritage feature that makes Lindsay almost unique among other cities and towns similar to ours. To leave the heritage area of David, Hopkins, Richard, and Linwood by not joining the new development does not incur any altered financial burden on taxpayers and immediate residents, nor does it negatively impact traffic flow, which seems extremely important given the new designs of new arteries and careful consideration being taken by the entire project. Hello and good afternoon. Thank you for your time. My name is Leslie Fillets. My husband Mark and I have resided at 5 David Drive since 1997. My views here are not excessively affected by whether I live on David Drive or not. My submission is wider in scope and is more directed to the long-term protection of some of our heritage areas of Lindsay that future residents have the opportunity and privilege of walking and bike riding through in and around our community that is unique, while also Lindsay and Kawartha Lakes being so accessible to the north of the Moraine and to larger cities. We do remain a smaller community in feel at the very least. The small subdivision of David, Hopkins, Richard, and Linwood is one of especially eye-pleasing and homey parts of Lindsay. It is almost unique because it's over a period of 50 years, it has retained the allure of custom-built, well-maintained, mid-range value homes. In some, it represents a healthy example of lifestyle of a thriving middle-class Ontario. a beautiful, functional, artistic, cul-de-sac-like infill development with one ingress and egress. The streets are heritage style with culverts and tar chip roads. The municipal cost of maintenance is relatively low. Those who choose to reside here in our area buy there because of the quiet heritage feel and not despite it. The plan of incorporating this heritage piece of Lindsay into the newly designed subdivision community serves no functional benefit, but will functionally dismantle a heritage part of our Lindsay that makes us beautifully unique among other cities and towns. I've lived in Lindsay long enough to know, to see how we've tossed, without long-term considerations, some of the heritage, beautiful parts of our town away for newly developed areas. We are far enough from the big cities to be able to keep ourselves a little heritage in nature while at the same time allowing for growth that we all desperately desire. Dismantling every corner of what makes us unique is simply not necessary and shall surely garnish regrets in the future when we have little to nothing unique left to boast of, especially when allowing some of these little parts of Lindsay to continue as is, have no additional negative financial burden on taxpayers. Even large city planners across Canada take care to identify and maintain the continuity of some community heritage type parts in their cities and towns. This allows us to boast of our heritage and beauty and to draw newcomers to Lindsay for decades to come. I join with my husband and neighbors in asking council and the various planning committees and Tribute to stop permanently the proposed vehicle access to the much desired new Tribute community that they are building here in Lindsay, to ultimately protect and maintain the heritage beauty of the small corner of David Hopkins, Richard, and Linwood, further to later boast why Lindsay is a beautiful place to move to, use the beauty in these corners as a positive example of how Lindsay has the perfect balance of small town feel to the larger city amenities, wants, and needs that we're growing. With all that is in me, based on review of the plans, there is simply no financial, physical, or safety upside reason for creating these permanent vehicle accesses to the newly proposed development. I believe I speak for all my neighbors when I say use the suggested accesses for foot and bike paths to the new parks and the natural creeks and environment areas. Do not take on the extra financial burden of the cost of this additional street opening project when the result truly serves no real positive purpose or reason. We implore our council and committees to stop this street access of both David Drive and Richard, thus leaving the heritage middle-class beauty intact as it is for others to enjoy for generations to come. We, Kawartha Lake residents, have voted you all in, believing we share the desire to grow Lindsay, while at the same time taking care to protect Lindsay's beauty, heritage, or beautiful heritage, where, at the very least, it's easily done. Including this extra unnecessary flow of traffic onto an already busy Angeline Street, the block stops and pauses based on plan reviews are already so close together along Angeline. Too close together for a smooth, comfortable movement of traffic when the new traffic flow being designed for, with the new main arteries that is so very well and carefully thought out, are more than ample to achieve the desired traffic flow effects. David Drive and Richard Avenue accesses to this large new subdivision community are so negligible in the big scheme that the heritage cost of moving forward with this project is far more damaging to our larger community as a whole, adding also that the continuity and feel of the two subdivisions is completely different in nature and style. By allowing the joining of these completely different the vehicle joining, I should really clarify that because we are supportive of the walking paths. By allowing the joining of these completely different built sub-communities, you would effectively and without intention begin a snowball effect of blending old and new, heritage with modern, that may, in the longer term, create a downturn in the quality and beauty that has abounded this small infill subdivision. Not properly planned and cared for, it has been seen in other cities and towns that over time and through ownership changes, the pride of ownership and caring for these larger properties effectively decreases. Too often, these lush, lovely infill areas become overburdened with unattractive land uses and homes that begin not to be cared for as they have been here for 50+ years. We plead to you to protect the little corners of Lindsay like this one. Allow them to continue to coexist with the growth that we all desire around us. There is no downside. There is no burden of cost. There is no negative impact whatsoever in the long run. Instead, you shall be allowing new residents over time to choose a style of living in our Lindsay. Having options is always a good thing. Council, please, and planning and tribute, please vote to allow the area of David Drive, Richard and Hopkins and Linwood to continue as it is without any vehicle connection to the large new subdivision community being applied for, to have the roads and drainage ditches and all that goes into the infrastructure as it is remains as is. To deem these roads a heritage part of Lindsay. A fine example of Lindsay living, retaining, as is the beautiful heritage offshoot subdivision it has been, without the need for sidewalks, curbs, and all that goes into the domino effect of costs involved in tearing all of this out to bring up the area for safety and physical standards required for the ultimate significant increase in traffic. Finally, there has been absolutely no plans by Tribute or anyone from the municipality discussing what the cost shall be to make the proposed street changes should you vote to allow these accesses, nor a timeline of when they would be required to start and finish. It is evident that there is no actual plan for this massive undertaking that opening up David and Richard to vehicle traffic will incur. The cost and effect of these massive changes negatively overshadows the positive results of choosing to retain the heritage area in its current beautiful state. Not to mention, there is no financial downside to the business end of Tribute by allowing David, Hopkins, and Richard and Linwood to remain as is.
Can I just get you to wrap up? We're
done.
well over the 5 minutes.
Okay, Tribute shall prosper and do well with the new community that they are endeavoring to complete. Once again, with respectfully, we ask council to vote this down. Rather than, this last part is important. Again, vote down and remove from the Tribute application the opening of David Drive, rather positively fully utilizing the new vehicle arteries and infrastructure. If you do not agree with us, as Lindsay residents are asking for, we request an indefinite pause on allowing the accesses until the entire Tribute community is 95% complete, with 95% house inhabited or such other reasonable percentage of completion, so that a separate study can then be undertaken to determine if these road accesses are required. Thank you, and thank you for the additional time.
Thank you, Mrs. Follis. Is there anyone else from the public wishing to speak to the South application?
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, council members, city planners, and others. Hello, my name is Donna Campbell. I have lived at 18 Richard Avenue for 17 years and grew up in Lindsay. My mother, Verna Curtin, has resided at 21 Linwood Road for more than 30 years, and her property abuts the end of Richard Avenue, where one of the extensions into the Tribute South development is being proposed. My mother and many other seniors in our neighborhood are unable to attend this meeting today in person, since it is difficult for them to sit for extended periods of time, and participating via Zoom can be difficult for many of them to navigate. For these reasons, there may be only a few speakers today, but we represent many residents who have met as a group on several occasions to discuss these issues. As you witnessed with the first public meeting for the Tribute Development, the residents of David Drive, Linwood Road, Hopkins, and Richard Avenue turned out en masse and are adamantly opposed to having two of our very short, quiet streets extended into the Tribute South subdivision. We have provided the council with a petition to deny the application by Tribute Developments to open our roads, signed by the residents. Tribute North is a large area with twice as many units as the South and has 4 exits. Tribute South, with far fewer units, has 8 exits, 2 of which you propose to put in our small little enclave. Thousands of cars running through our little community will destroy our quiet neighborhood and way of life. We do not understand the need to flow your traffic through our streets when 1 block to the south of David Drive is St. Joseph Roads, a proposed exit onto Angeline, and to 1 block to the north is Connolly Road, which also exits onto Angeline Street. Why do you need 4 exits onto Angeline within a 4-block radius? It makes no sense to us that you would devastate a small neighborhood to add 2 more exits in an area that already has ample exits and twice as many as Tribute North. Looking back at the proposed development of the same land in 2011 by Orsi, David Drive and Richard Avenue were designated as walkways into the subdivision, not roadways. And I've provided a map of their proposal and design of the land, showing quite clearly that Richard Avenue and David Drive are walkways. Therefore, inhabitants of our 4 short streets are still in dismay that the new developer, Tribute, want to turn 2 of our streets into thoroughfares for its subdivision. How is this fair to the serenity and well-being of homeowners of this neighborhood? Many have lived here for more than 4 decades. These streets have no sidewalks, and thus we walk on them and children play on them, and we are okay with that, since we have minimal traffic and most of us know to drive cautiously. If a prior developer was able to provide a plan that didn't include our streets as exits, then we have faith that Tribute can find other options. A new community should enhance existing neighborhoods, not devastate them or disrupt a way of life. Development is inevitable, but it should not only be about economic gain. Consideration of the impact on existing dwellers and thus constituents must be as important and part of the equation. The residents of our small enclave invite the town planners, Tribute staff, and council members to meet with us, walk through our neighborhood, such that you may better appreciate our concerns and perhaps understand why your proposal to extend David Drive and Richard Avenue would be so detrimental to us. Tribute stated they wanted to be good neighbors, so as good neighbors do, we sincerely invite you to our neighborhood. at your earliest convenience. Thank you, Donna Campbell. Thank you, Council. For your
Thank you,
time.
Mrs. Campbell. Is there anyone else from the public wishing to speak to the South application?
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of council, tribute developers, and Cedar Kawartha Lake's residents. My name's Paul Hill, and I've lived in Lindsay since 1986. I accepted a permanent teaching job as an English teacher at IE Weldon at that time and have enjoyed retirement for the past 13 years. Having presided previously in Toronto for 31 years, I know all about noise pollution and traffic. As a longtime resident of Richard Avenue, I was able to sit on my porch and enjoy peace and quiet and the wildlife in the field behind us. Premium pricing for living in our unique enclave on Richard Avenue was money well spent. I was witness to observing children playing on safe streets, reminding me of my own neighborhood in Etobicoke on Abilene Drive. It too was free from the blare of impatient drivers and the stress of everyone in a constant hurry. Although my Toronto childhood was a much more youthful group for the most part, our older residents could move up and down the suburbs at an unhurried pace, safe with the knowledge that someone wouldn't roar around the bend and run them over. Now to the present. I quickly became cognizant that Lindsay was the second largest haven in Canada for seniors following Peterborough. One would expect that a respect for that core group would follow. Just outside our backyard, after being reassured that disruptions by the onset of Belmont homes would be minimal, we have had to endure for the last 3 years, banging and crashing about, swearing and blaring of music as new houses sprung up. We were promised very little upset, yet reality soon set in. Drifting construction dirt means everything is covered in a layer of dirt requiring daily cleaning and sweeping. Peace and quiet, which had previously been the norm, no longer existed, except on Sundays when presumably construction workers were not on site but in church. It would seem that the pursuit of the economic growth encouraged and sponsored by our Premier continues to outweigh the interests of our retired seniors and residents on David Drive, Hopkins and Linwood Roads, and Richard Avenue. Tribute Homes would be wise to take a page from Flato Developments Incorporated and be a philanthropic contributor rather than a disruptor of neighborhoods that have worked well for decades. The extension of David Drive and Richard Avenue will destroy our way of life there. One way in and one way out has been and would still be the most effective way of protecting our enclave. 2,000 more homes at an average of 2 to 3 vehicles per house without consideration for existing enclaves, neighborhoods, and residents, not to mention the environmental impacts, is short-sighted. As fellow homeowners, I cannot imagine any of you would welcome this kind of traffic encroaching on your home. David Drive and Richard Avenue do not need to be outlets. Tribute South has ample exits and double that of Tribute North. We will all still have to deal with constant construction, noise, dirt, and disruption for many years to come as you build your community in our backyards. Simply ensuring the aforementioned should be more than enough of a neighborhood contribution to your massive project. Flato Developments, coincidentally building on the east side of Lindsay, have some fascinating promotional literature as viewed on the final page of The Advocate. Why not take a page from them? Quote, committed to giving back and supporting the communities where they build and operate, end of quote. Perhaps this is Flato Developments inflating its promotional literature? I do agree, though, when they state, quote, home is where the heart is, end of quote. The residents of our enclave in protecting expansion are not philosophically opposed to development. It needs to be carried on in a manner that respects the rights of longtime residents. Their safety, heritage, and continued peaceful existence should be the #1 focus of Tribute Homes. The homeowners of David Drive, Hopkins Road, Richard and Linwood Avenues have clearly exhibited where our hearts are. Thanks for listening, and please seriously consider our common feelings regarding future planned expansions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Is there anyone else from the public wishing to speak to the South application?
Yes, online we have Joe and Maureen McCall.
Start video. Good afternoon to all. Our names are Joe and Maureen McCall at Richard Avenue in Lindsay. Thank you for this opportunity to represent our community. Our aim is not to oppose the tribute development, but rather to oppose the plans of street connections into our subdivision of Richard, Hopkins, Linwood, and David Drive. A development benefits a lot of people, but the proposed plan is clearly the opposite for our subdivision. The many residents should not have to suffer the consequences that traffic flows and possible construction of infrastructure upgrades that these street connections will create. When you study the Tribute South plan, there are 8 street connections, 1 west, 1 south, 1 north, 1 southeast, and 4 more on the east side. 2 of these are Richard Avenue and David Drive, and their connections will cause great problems for us and are unnecessary given the configuration of access on the east side of Tribute South. Both Richard and David are within 100 meters of Conley and Sylvester connections respectively that have been built to modern standards. Granted, the streets of our subdivision would be less than acceptable for the connections, but we feel they serve us well enough with only our local use. We know that this submission is mainly repetitive, and I apologize for that, but we need to do this to impress upon planning and tribute how seriously concerning this is to traffic safety and our overall enjoyment of life. Mr. Solly, at the March 3rd public meeting, said that if Tribute creates a problem, they will bear the expense of fixing it. I fail to see how this intrusion of street connections could be fixed. Thank you, and we respectfully request your consideration on our behalf.
Thank you for that, Mr. and Mrs. McCall. Is there anyone else from the public wishing to speak to the South application? Anyone else from the public wishing to speak to the South application? Okay, seeing and hearing none. Committee, Mr. Sully, is there anything you'd like to respond to based on questions and comments made?
No specific responses. Definitely hear the message from everyone today. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee, you've got a recommendation before you. Mayor Latham.
Thank you. I'll read it. That report plan 2022-037, amend the Lindsay official plan and zoning bylaw 2000-75 together with a draft plan of subdivision at vacant land on Highway 35 Lindsay Tribute, Lindsay 1 Limited application D01 2022-004, D06 2022-012, and D05 2022-002 be received. That the plan 2022-037 respecting applications D01 2022-004, D06 2022-012, and D05 2022-0 be referred back to staff to address any issues raised through the public consultation process and for further review and processing until such time that all comments have been received from all circulated agencies and city departments and that any comments and concerns have been addressed. And if I get a seconder, I'd like to speak to it, please.
Seconded by Councillor O'Reilly.
Thank you. I just wanted to say for all the folks who have came and zoomed in and came to the previous public meeting that this is why we have public meetings, so we can hear, you know, what your local concerns are, and it's important. And I know Tribute hears you. I know our planning staff hear you. By referring this back to staff and the developer, we're asking them as a council and a planning committee to come up with a solution to the issues that have been brought forward. If they don't come up with a solution when this comes back for approval, then council will have to come up with a solution. But 99% of the time, staff and the developer who want to do something in the community that works will come up with a solution. But by hearing your concerns, they now know what the issues are that we have to deal with. So I just wanted to say that we're not passing this back because it's not the time to make a decision. We're sending it back so that they can take the comments that we've heard, come up with a solution, come back, and perhaps the plan that they come back with meets with those concerns and meets with everyone's approval, and then we sort of, everybody moves forward together in a more positive way. But if we don't hear from you folks, we don't know those concerns. So, you know, I know it can be a tedious process, and you know, we had the other one at the Old Admiral Inn there, and lots of people showed up. We all heard your concerns. So that's an important part of this process. So we appreciate everybody taking the time to come and share those concerns with us. So thank you.
Any further discussion? Councillor Dunn?
Yeah, just a very brief comment. It's a process. We have to put something on the table. In this case, Tribute put something on the table so that we would have something to discuss, so we know where the problems are. Tribute has been extremely upfront. They haven't tried to hide this. They wanted to hear what the story is. They certainly have. You know, please let the process. We can fight this at council if in fact the right answers don't come back. But Tribute's got a great reputation throughout the province, and now that they know what the problem is, I trust them in planning to come back with a solution that works for everybody, and that's what we're after.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, calling the question. All in favor? That carries. Okay, thank you. At this point, I'm going to suggest we take a quick break. It's 2:53. We'll come back and continue on at 3 o'clock. How's that? We're going to move into 3.4, Plan 2022-042, an application to amend the Township of Finland zoning bylaw 12-95 at 1491 Glenarm Road, Victor Webster Farms Limited. Sherry Ray.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you to the chair. Notice was given in accordance with the Planning Act. Notice was sent to assessed owners within 500 meters of the property, and the property was posted by the city sign company. The Director of Development Services approved 2 consent applications on the property, with the first proposal to sever 2 rural residential lots in the hamlet of Glenarm. Specifically, the first lot created would have frontage on Fennel Road, which you see on the slide as parcel A. And the second lot has minimal frontage on the Glenarm Road, which is parcel B. The majority of the retained parcel remains agricultural and is part of the farm. As a condition of provisional consent in both applications, the proposed rural residential lots are to be rezoned to reflect the proposed residential use and larger lot areas. In addition, the proposed lot area in the second lot, parcel B, requires a rezoning to permit a lesser amount of lot frontage. The consents represent proposed lots that are within the hamlet settlement of Glenarm, and that is in accordance with the city's official plan, while at the same time reflecting the balance of the farm, which stretches east to Elm Tree Road. The report outlines the proposed rezoning in the context of provincial policy and the City of Kawartha Lake's official plan. Again, prime ag land is being created. The lots are within the hamlet settlement boundary of the City of Kawartha Lake's official plan. So by virtue of that happening, we are upholding the policies of the City of Kawartha Lake's official plan. Under zoning bylaw review, the subject land is zoned agricultural, A1 in the Township of Finland zoning bylaw. The proposed lots are being rezoned to hamlet residential to reflect that proposed residential use. And staff is recommending site-specific zones for both the north and south parcels that recognize the increased lot areas so that subsequent severances are not coming forward. And the HR 7 that you see in the draft zoning bylaw is also addressing the minimum lot frontage from 30 meters down to 15. I know it seems narrow, but it is keeping the lot creation inside that hamlet settlement boundary area. Subsequent to the preparation of the report, staff spoke with Barbara Jones, and she was expressing concerns with water. Not unheard of in Glenarm. There have been severances created where the city has looked at the quality and quantity of water in the hamlet. Staff confirmed with her that each lot had a condition of provisional consent that requires a well to be constructed and that a qualified professional hydrogeologist submit a report that confirms water and quantity not only on the subject land, but also that the wells will not impact the abutting properties. In conclusion, the application conforms to the growth plan and is consistent with the PPS. The application also conforms to the city's official plan. Staff supports the application and recommend that the draft zoning bylaw be referred to council for approval. Thank you.
Thanks, Sherry. Committee, any questions of Sherry at this point? Okay, seeing and hearing none. Does the applicant, owner, or agent on behalf of the applicant, owner, wish to speak to the application? All right, seeing, hearing none. Is there anybody from the public wishing to speak to this application? Anyone from the public wishing to speak to this application? Third and final time, anyone from the public wishing to speak to this application? Okay, seeing and hearing none. Councillor O'Reilly.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I'd move the recommendation to amend the Township of Finland zoning bylaw 12-95 at 1491 Glenarm Road, Victor Webster Farms Limited be received, and that the zoning bylaw respecting the application D06 2022-017 substantially in the form attached as Appendix C to report plan 2022-042 be approved for adoption by council, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute any documents and agreements required by the approval of this application.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Member Brumwell. Any discussion? Calling the question. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Item 3.5, Plan 2022-043, an application to amend the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan and Township of Manver zoning bylaw 87-06 at 682 Mount Orb Road. Mark Lahaye.
Good afternoon, members of Planning Advisory Committee. Notice for these applications for the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment was given to each assessed landowner within 500 meters and all applicable agencies and departments. A sign was posted on the property as well in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act. I'm going to attempt to share my screen here. Subject land is located midway between the hamlet of Janetville to the southwest and the village of Omimi to the northeast on the south side of Mount Horeb Road. The subject property is located within a predominantly agricultural area consisting of a mix of natural lands, pasture, haylands, and land suitable for crop production, and contains a single detached dwelling with detached garage and an existing barn to be utilized for the proposed use and a shed. The owner has applied to permit the establishment of a use consisting of a small-scale auto recycling center / repair shop and used car dealership, known as the automotive facility, on the northwest portion of the property as an on-farm diversified use on an existing agricultural lot that would be a secondary use that would serve to diversify and enhance the income potential of the main agricultural use. The applications propose to amend the prime agricultural designation with a site-specific policy to permit a small automobile or automotive facility as an on-farm diversified use, secondary to an agricultural use, and to amend the rural general zone to a rural general exception zone to also permit an automobile recycling or repair and used car sales business on a portion of the subject land, which is in this vicinity here, outlined with the diagonal red lines. Mount Horeb Road, it's up here. The existing driveway comes in here. There's the existing dwelling, garage, and the barn area that would be used for the proposed use. Various documents and plans were submitted by the applicant in support of the proposed amendment, including an agricultural impact assessment indicating that agricultural land impacts are minimized as minimal agricultural land is being used and no negative compatibility issues are anticipated, along with MDS calculations in relation to existing barns within the review area, which concludes that MDS setbacks are met. Since the writing of this report, we have received public comments from Keith Harrison of 641 Mount Horeb Road, concerned with increased traffic and displaced wildlife, as well as the aesthetics and potential for decreasing property values for a use which will take away from the rural and country setting. In addition, we received a call from James Blair, who resides in the area, who also questioned the use as well as the farming operation on the subject land and inquired about the process to participate in the public meeting. We received an email also from Nigel Selwood of 710 Mount Horeb Road, concerned in relation to noise limits and operating hours and the future potential expansion of the business. We also received a call from David Kempster who was acting along with Julie Kempster of 816 Old Mill Road, who is concerned with the auto recycling use as a scrapyard and felt that it was an inappropriate location, and was also concerned with increased traffic near the crest of a hill, as well as environmental impacts. We've received agricultural related comments from our Economic Development Division, indicating particular concern with respect to potential for environmental contamination of prime agricultural land for the proposed auto recycling and sales use, as well as the scale of the business and potential expansion and traffic implications for use that's more suitable to a hamlet or an urban area, as well as concerns regarding the protection of prime agricultural land from fragmentation and agricultural viability. Another main concern is the fact that the landowner is not related to the agricultural operations on farm diversified uses according to the guidelines and permitted uses in Ontario's prime agricultural areas, publication 851, prepared by OMAFRA, are intended to enable farm operators to diversify and supplement their farm income, as well as to accommodate value-added and agritourism uses in prime agricultural areas. These policies were not created to allow non-farmers to establish non-agricultural businesses on prime agricultural lands. We have received comments also from Kawartha Conservation, noting no concern with the applications based on their consideration for natural heritage, natural hazards, and water resources, provided the development and all related activities will not impact the natural features present on the property and subject to any permits that may be required prior to any on-site works. These applications are being further evaluated for determining conformity with the policies of the 2019 growth plan and to the policies of the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan, as well as consistency with the provincial policy statement, including the guidelines on permitted uses in Ontario's prime agricultural areas, which specify that on-farm diversified uses are to be located on a farm, minimize the amount of land removed from agricultural production, be compatible with the rural character of the neighborhood, and remain secondary in nature to the on-site agricultural operation. The background information which has been submitted in support of the application has been circulated to appropriate agencies and city departments for review and comment. At this time, comments have not been received from all circulated agencies and city departments, including sewage system comments and comments from fire and paramedics, as well as from the licensing division related to requirements for salvage yard/recycling businesses. In consideration of the comments and analysis contained in this report, staff respectfully recommend that the proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendment applications be referred back to staff for further review and processing until such time as comments have been received from all circulated agencies and city departments, and that any comments or concerns have been addressed. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Mark. Committee, any questions? Councillor Dunn?
Not a question, but I'll give you the motion when you're ready. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Question. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mark, could you clarify the ownership of the property? There was some discussion that he wasn't eligible because he doesn't own the property. I think you mentioned. Did you say that for a non-farm agricultural use?
Yeah, through the chair, the owner of the property, I understand, is not a farmer and has leased some of the land for production purposes to another farmer.
Any further questions of Mark? Okay. Does the applicant owner or agent on behalf of the applicant owner wish to speak to the application?
Good afternoon. Through you, Mr. Chair. Mark has provided a thorough overview of the application, and we are in agreement that it be referred back to staff at this time until all those comments are received from the commenting agencies. and that we can provide responses as required to those comments. I can answer any questions should committee have any. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Committee, any questions? Okay. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak to this application?
Good afternoon, individuals. Mayor, members of council, thank you very much. And before I start, I would like to comment on what I've seen and heard here thus far. And Mayor Latham, I'd like to add to your comments about public participation. It's greatly involved and needed. What is quite interesting is just the process by which the individuals were notified. In a rural community, the difference if you're living in northern Lindsay or in some of the communities that you're speaking of here today, giving notice to people 500 meters or 500 yards either side of the area. In the rural community, you can't. That might be a groundhog or a pigeon, because you don't get to the proper landowner yet. And again, I believe, following best practices, which I think everyone should be considering, the City of Toronto and other municipalities are also looking at changing how this information is distributed and disseminated to people, because maybe the signs that are stuck on a road corner such as this one don't really get the attention of the public that they should, and information that's important is embedded in such a way that you need to have a degree in Latin or Swahili to understand exactly what they're speaking of. So I think that needs to be addressed by council, and I don't think it'd be too short of time to get at that. However, as I've mentioned, and I sent a written comment into the city of Kawartha Lakes, it is noted that the property mentioned here is the old Kawartha landscaping property. And the individuals, and again, this is just my own assessment, no actual agricultural practices are taking place there by the landowner other than renting the land to a second party. And as such, they should be precluded from the application based on that solely because they don't actually meet it. Now, this is my own opinion and from what I've researched. So if that could be noted, which I believe your city staff member actually has. Secondarily, which I would like to draw, actually, interesting enough, on the Appendix C there, if you take a look, the actual property in itself is located on a sloping area towards a wetland, which oddly enough, the Conservation Authority suggested that they have no concern with it because where the proposed building and I guess auto recycling or end-of-life recycling, I guess it's technically called now for automobiles, is less than 500 meters away from protected wetlands. Interesting enough, that's the same distance that people would have got a mail noticing of this amendment or proposal. Also, if you take a look at the top right-hand corner, you could see the Pigeon Lake and the tributaries of waters that pour through there. 3 of the individuals that commented today that were noted were individuals that were, I think, sent messages in today because they weren't aware of the process and they just got a hold of that information today via myself because of the way that the information is disseminated to people. Last thing I'd like to add is that in the infrastructure, as you can see there, or the picture, pardon me, the Appendix C, that is the Pigeon River, which goes down in towards not only local farming areas, but also the former Crusaders Bible Camp, which is also noted as Mill Stream Bible Camp, which individuals use that waterway quite frequently for recreational use. And the concern of a lot of people in that area is the leaching of the drumlin area, which this property is on, again, tilted or sloped towards the Pigeon River. It's unquestionable that there's going to be spills or fluids making their way into the water as an environmental concern as well. So I'd like to build on those concerns by your agricultural development organization as well. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Can we just get your name for the record?
Yes, it's James Blair, B-L-A-I-R.
Great, thank you. Is there anyone else from the public wishing to speak to this application? Third and final call. Anyone else from the public wishing to speak to this application? Okay. Ms. Kennedy, did you want an opportunity to respond to any comments?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I have no further comments at this time to the comments we received today, but we hear them, and we will look forward to working with staff to address those concerns.
Thank you. Committee, what are your wishes?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll give you a motion that report planned 2022-043, part of Lot 19, Concession 14, Geographic Township of Manver, identified as 682 Mount Orb Road, Boudin, Mir, Afghan, application D01-2022-02 and D06-2022-008 be received, and that the applications respecting the proposed official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment be referred back to staff until such time as all comments have been received from all circulating agencies and city departments and for further review and processing.
Thank you. A seconder? Member Barkwell, any discussion? Mayor Latham?
Sorry. Yeah, I'm struggling with this one, and I know we're referring it back to staff, but I'm not sure we shouldn't just be denying it. We kind of drew a line in the sand, I think, committee and council, with our trailer sales regarding on-farm diversified use last month. What is suitable? What's a suitable area to do these? A big fan of on-farm diversified use for farmers to make some extra income when it makes sense. From what I'm reading and hearing here, this doesn't make sense. It's not a suitable area. There's some agriculture, environmental concerns. I'm struggling why we're sending it back for more work when, to me, it doesn't make sense. I think I know staff have brought it forward and they don't have that line in the sand regarding diversified use for farming, secondary use. But I think we're starting to draw that line in the sand, and I think that line that we've started to draw, again, now you're talking about car sales, repair, oil leakage, you're talking about prime agricultural land. Like, there has to be a limit somewhere on what we consider suitable for prime agricultural land, and I don't think this even comes close. So I certainly won't support it if it comes back to committee with an approval, and I think we should just deny it and save everybody a lot of work, but that's just my thoughts. Thanks.
Mr. Chair.
Any further discussion, Councillor Dunn?
Mr. Chair, I'm more than happy to withdraw my motion. I didn't think I could I thought it had to go back to staff in order for denial. I completely agree with the former comments, and if we can do it now, it does save everybody time and effort. So I'm more than happy to withdraw my motion. And I'm not exactly sure of the wording for a new motion, but I'm quite content in withdrawing the motion I put on the table.
Okay. And you're good with that?
So I will withdraw the second. I agree.
Go ahead, Mayor Latham.
Okay, I'll give you a motion then that report plan 2022-043, part of lot 19, concession 14, geographic township of Manvers, identified as 682 Mount Horeb Road, Mir Afghan, applications D01 2022-002 and D06 2022-008 be received, and that the applications respecting the proposed official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment be denied.
Seconder, Member Brumwell. Any discussion? Councillor O'Reilly.
Well, yes, I couldn't let this one go by after defending the other one. Anyways, I was just a couple issues. First of all, if I was thinking it was to go back to staff and they were perhaps to amend the application to just a local repair shop. For example, like there's a number in our neighborhood that just have a car and a tractor repair shop. I think the Amish, the Mennonites do a lot of it. And I think we have a number, 3 of them within 5 miles of my own house, that people do a home occupation. I think I find the ownership troubling. The fact that maybe perhaps it doesn't make it eligible, but I would think if they were to revise the application to just a farm and a repair shop for vehicles, I think it might be more suitable, but it's the will of this committee to decide what they want to do with it. But because we all know there's a lot of repair shops in our community that are in the country, and many of them today are legal non-conforming, but there are a number that are out there as well.
Any further discussion? Okay, calling the question. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. All right, moving along to 3.6, Plan 2022-044, an application to amend the Township of Manver zoning bylaw 87-06 at 397 Fleetwood Road, Carcity. Mark Lahaye.
Okay, notice for this application was given to each assessed landowner within 500 meters and all applicable agencies and departments, and a sign was posted on the property in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act. The subject property is located within a rural and agricultural area and is located southeast of the hamlet of Janetville on the north side of Fleetwood Road between Janetville Road and Highway 35. The owner has applied to permit a new agricultural use, being a building for hay storage on an open space zone portion of the land. The application proposes to rezone a portion of the property from open space to an appropriate exception zone to permit the proposed hay and equipment storage building that will not contain livestock, as well as recognize the existing dwelling and surrounding area that does not presently permit buildings or structures.
Can you adjust your slides, Mark? I think we're still showing the previous slides.
I bumped the wrong way here on the mouse. So that is the subject land along Fleetwood Road. And then this particular slide here shows an aerial view of the property, the dwelling, and the proposed hay storage and equipment storage shed is located in this particular vicinity of the property, and the area that is proposed to have the open space exception zone would encompass approximately a rectangle area in this vicinity right here. This is on Appendix C, shows the property and the current zoning with open space on the O1 category here, as well as the agricultural zone over here. And again, the location for the proposed exception zone to the open space would be in this vicinity right here. So the effect of the amendment will facilitate the construction of an agricultural storage buildings to support a livestock operation on the subject land, and recognize the area where the proposed agricultural storage building is to be located and the existing dwelling, which is on a portion that's not currently zoned to permit buildings or structures. Documents and plans were submitted by the applicant in support of the proposed amendment, including a letter from the owner justifying the need for the proposed amendment. Agricultural land impacts are minimized as the proposed building location is on a gravel area. It's not used for agricultural production, and no negative compatibility issues are anticipated, as the proposed storage building will not contain livestock and therefore not trigger MDS setback requirements. The application has been evaluated for determining conformity with the policies of the growth plan, as well as the city's official plan, and consistency with the provincial policy statement. The background information which has been submitted in support of the application was circulated to the appropriate agencies and city departments for review and comment. Since the writing of this report, we've received comments from the Agriculture Economic Development Officer indicating no concerns with the application. And we've also received comments from Kawartha Conservation indicating no concern with the application based on their consideration for natural heritage, natural hazards, and water resources, provided the development and all related activities will not impact the natural features that are present on the property. A permit is required within their regulated area prior to any on-site works. At this time, staff has received no comments from the public. And I'll leave my presentation there.
Thanks for that, Mark. Any questions? Mayor Latham?
Thank you. Mark, you and I spoke about this application, or I guess we emailed. When you wrote the report and recommended it be referred back, you hadn't heard from a couple of the agencies. You now have. Nobody has any concerns. If nothing comes up in the public meeting, would you have any objection to this committee recommending it be approved and move forward?
Through the chair, Mayor Latham, staff are reasonably satisfied that this application conforms to provincial policies and the city's official plan and is consistent with the PPS. And notwithstanding our recommendation in the report, in consideration of the additional comments that we have received, and upon this further evaluation, provided there's no additional information that's raised at this public meeting, that would alter this recommendation, I would respectfully recommend that the proposed zoning amendment and application and respective bylaw be referred to council for approval, and that the mayor and the clerk be authorized to execute any documents and agreements that are required by the approval of this application.
Thanks, Mark. That was a long yes, but thank you.
Any further questions of Mark at this time? Member Brumwell?
Mark, through the chair, how do we control an individual like this from converting that barn to cattle or sheep or whatever have you in the future?
Through the chair, the specific zoning bylaw amendment that would be drafted would have language to the effect for the exception open space zone that no livestock would be permitted in that agricultural storage building.
Any further questions? Okay, seeing and hearing none, does the applicant, owner, or agent on behalf of the applicant owner wish to speak to the application? You're all good, Mr. Carcity?
Yeah, no, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak to this application? Anyone from the public wishing to speak to the application? Third and final call, anyone from the public wishing to speak to the application? Seeing and hearing none, committee, what are your wishes? Mayor Latham?
Thank you. I'll give you the motion that the report plan 2022-044, Part Lot 7, Concession 12, Part 1, RP 9R1404, Geographic Township of Manver, City of Kawartha Lakes, identified as 397 Fleetwood Road, Carcity, D06 2022-016 be received, and that the application respecting the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, along with the necessary bylaw, be forwarded to council for approval, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute any documents and agreements required by the approval of this application. I think that captures the wording.
Seconder, Councillor O'Reilly. Any discussion? Calling the question, all in favor? That carries. Thank you. This public meeting held under the Planning Act is now adjourned, and we'll move into item 4, deputations, which I believe we have none. 5, correspondence, which I believe we have none. And now 6, regular and returned reports. 6.1, Plan 2022-041, subdivision agreement for Morningside Phase 2, Dobson Street, Lindsay. Sherry Ray.
Good afternoon, and thank you to the chair. On May 30th, 2017, council granted draft plan approval to a plan of subdivision 16T 15501 to create 71 single-family lots, 12 semi-detached lots, and blocks for 3 future single-family lots, a block for road widening, and a block for a 1-foot reserve. On April 28th, 2020, the Director of Development Services extended that draft plan approval until May 30th, 2023. Council's direction is that subdivision agreements shall be reviewed by the Planning Advisory Committee and should be for the recommendation to council. Sorry about that. The purpose of this report is to present the staff endorsed draft subdivision agreement, which is attached to your report as Appendix C, respecting the draft plan, which is attached as Appendix B. Sorry, it's not too clear, but once again, it's a large parcel of land in Lindsay. The Ray Abraham, as owner of the numbered company 2047161 Ontario Limited, has requested that the city prepare the required subdivision agreement for what is known as the Morningside Subdivision Phase 2 Draft Approved Plan of Subdivision. Staff is aware that the subject lands have been sold to Maplebrook Homes Ltd. With a closing date later in the year. Depending on the timing of the clearing of the draft plan conditions, the city will enter into the subdivision agreement that you have before you with the registered owner of the property and secure the appropriate securities. There are 62 conditions of draft plan approval. Most of these have already been fulfilled and others will be fulfilled in accordance with the requirements and obligations set out in the subdivision agreement that's attached to the report. The staff report outlines the request in the provincial context and conformity with the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan and the Town of Lindsay official plan, which you've heard previously due to the appeals. With respect to zoning compliance, the lands are appropriately zoned to accommodate the proposed development, some singles, some semis. There is, however, a holding provision that remains on the lands that is required to be removed. The holding provision was applied through the original proposals until such time that municipal water and sanitary sewer is available for the development and that stormwater management is satisfactory to the city. I believe those requirements have been met through the engineering review of the subdivision agreement, but we will need an application from Mr. Abraham to bring to council to remove that holding provision. Subsequent to the preparation of the report, planning has been advised that there was a request for DC deferral, which has been approved. So we will add that into the public record. So in conclusion, staff respectfully recommends that the subdivision agreement be approved. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Sherry. Committee, any questions of Sherry at this time? All right, seeing and hearing none. What are your wishes? Councillor O'Reilly?
I'll move the recommendation, Mr. Chair, as printed there, that the Ontario Limited Subdivision Agreement for Morningside Phase 2 be received, and the subdivision agreement for 2074161 Ontario Limited substantially in the form attached as Appendix C to Report Plan 2022-041 be approved by council, and the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute any documents and agreements required by the approval of this agreement.
Thank you. Seconder for that motion, Councillor Dunn. Any discussion? Councillor O'Reilly?
Maybe just a point of clarification, just to make sure with the transfer of the property, you don't see any challenges with this agreement, Sherry?
No, I do not. There are still, the agreement comes to you, the recommendations substantially in the form of, we are aware that there is, Ray Abraham has been very forthcoming that the property is sold. So staff will be working with him and the new owners to finalize the agreement.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Calling the question, all in favor? That carries. Thank you. 6.2 we've already dealt with, and that brings us to 6.3, Development Concierge Program. It's all yours, Lindsay.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair, and good afternoon, everybody. Today I'm going to provide an overview of the Development Concierge Program. So if we can get my slides, perfect, and next slide. Terrific. So the concierge pilot program was developed in response to recommendations from the Economic Recovery Task Force in the summer of 2020 to increase efficiency and service delivery times for planning applications to assist with recovery from COVID-19. So it was a 9-month pilot program for development applications in the site plan process with an identifiable impact on local economic growth. And based on the conclusion of the program, it was determined that the program would be an asset for investment attraction and business expansion, but would require modifications to make it effective. Next slide. Perfect. So, which brings us to the second phase of this program. So this would be the Development Concierge Program. So the intent of this program is to support the growth of new and existing businesses in Kawartha Lakes with a formal service to facilitate the development application process through a single and consistent point of contact. So it would be through all processes in the development phase. So whether it be from, walking and calling me and saying I'm interested in a property to the very end of that project. So it's a collaborative and holistic approach to each project. Will help facilitate this program and ensure its success over the long term. There will be a focus on large, complex employment and industrial projects with a substantial economic impact while increasing local employment opportunities. Next slide, perfect. So the objectives of the Development Concierge Program include providing support to the city's development review process, continuing to leverage and strengthen interdepartmental and interagency collaboration, collaborate with external agencies to ensure key files are streamlined, provide an elevated customer service experience, enhance the city's public relations within the development process, and support and supplement implementation of related strategies, including the council adopted strategic plan and the economic development strategy. So this is the Development Concierge process, which I'm going to walk through, just so we all have an understanding of how applicants would move through the process and the supports that will be provided. And I just want to make note, it is in the report, but this program is subject to capacity limits with a maximum of 5 files in the program at any given time, unless capacity allows for it to be expanded. So if one project is graduating and on their way out, there could be capacity to add one more and adding a 6th. Next slide. So the first step of the process is a discovery call. So just as an example, a manufacturing company might be interested in relocating to Kawartha Lakes, and myself as the Economic Development Officer of Business and the concierge, I would speak to them about their property requirements. If they meet at least 2 of the eligibility guidelines, so for example, they fall within one of our key sectors, or they are, they are an employment generator bringing 10 plus jobs and have a focus on employment or industry, they would be eligible to enter into the concierge program. So of course, it is up to them if they would like to be put through the program, or they can decline. And as the concierge, I would obtain their core data for the concierge team. So that's where internal conversation would take place on the project. And then an intake form would be completed, and then they would start moving through the concierge process. And next slide. So the second step is a kickoff meeting, and this is where the manufacturing business that is potentially interested in locating Kawartha Lakes might have 3 or more, 1, 2 properties that they might be interested in pursuing. So internal conversations would take place with the technical team, so this is the concierge team, regarding the 3 properties and which property would be best suited for their needs. Depending on the complexity of the proposal, a meeting could take place with the applicant and the technical team regarding which property would be best suited for them. So this meeting is prior to pre-consultation, and it's not to duplicate pre-con. So based on the requirements of the business and chosen property, the business would be directed to pre-con or site plan or wherever they fall within the development process. So timelines and milestones for this project will be provided as well to the applicant. It will also be communicated to the applicants that there is a level of shared commitment to each project. So There will be an emphasis on the importance of communicating the city's expectations and requirements to the applicants to ensure a quicker process. If either parties, for whatever reason, aren't able to stick with these timelines, it will be communicated. And as the concierge, I will be able to follow up with the applicants to see, like, if the timelines have gone past, maybe there's something that I can do to, you know, hold their hand and move through the process, maybe a little bit more seamlessly. So if the applicant also doesn't have a consultant, that's where myself as the concierge could suggest that one is obtained to work through the application process. Next slide. So step 3 would be is a great milestone where applications are submitted. So the technical team would be responsible for their own processes, and the concierge would act as a touch point for the business. So the business could have concerns regarding their application, whether it be timeframes need to be altered, or there could be a few hiccups if they're looking for a little bit more information. That's where the concierge would be able to step in and help with any additional supports that they may need. Step 4, perfect. So this is step 4, which is reviewing the application. So the respective divisions within the technical team are still responsible for their role within the development process and will review the required applications. As a touch point, again, the concierge can follow up with the applicant if there has been a breakdown in communication or the technical team has not yet received all required documentations by specific timeframes. So there's an elevated level of service that is being provided to projects within this concierge program. The concierge is responsible for ensuring that projects continue to move forward. So really, ultimately, that is, you know, the main goal of this concierge program is making sure that projects are moving forward, and how the concierge can assist with, you know, making them go forward. Next slide is approvals. So a huge milestone where a technical team is responsible for approving submissions, and the concierge again just continues to provide support to the applicant as they need. Thank you. And step 6, which is my favorite step, they are completed and continuous support. So the applicant has graduated from the concierge program and hopefully to soon start construction of their building or expansion, or you know, whatever it may be. Even though the applicant has graduated though from this concierge program, the sector economic development officer or myself as the economic development officer of business will continue to provide support to the business throughout its life cycle. We are not just dropping them from this program and you know, sending them on their merry way. Myself will still be providing supports through their life cycle, and maybe they'll be back into the program with an expansion in the future. Next slide. So the next steps for this program. So the development concierge program will be promoted based on the eligibility guidelines as a soft launch to existing businesses who are currently in the sales funnel, and into incoming investment inquiries. Because this is pilot 2.0, I guess, there may be some kinks that we need to work out. So we are just doing the soft launch. There are a couple of folks that are in the sales funnel, of course confidential, that might align with this program. They do meet the eligibility guidelines. So once we are up and running, it'll be a great opportunity to get some folks into this program. And once the program has been trialed for a period of time, a communication and marketing plan will be prepared. And again, by period of time, it means we are selective with the businesses that will be entering into this concierge program. They do need to meet at least 2 of our eligibility guidelines, and there may be kinks along the way. This program has really grown from the pilot program that existed a year or so ago. So there will be kinks we need to work out. And once those kinks have been worked out and we have gotten a few businesses through the concierge program, through their inception to completion, we will be able to start marketing this program and really promoting it to to the community. And as I'm out in doing investment, it's a great selling feature for the city of Kawartha Lakes, as providing these supports to our developers. And then myself, the Economic Development Officer of Business, will report back to the Development Review Team on a bi-monthly basis on the status of each project. And that is the concierge program.
Thanks, Lindsay. Committee, any questions or comments for Lindsay? Member Barkwell?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Lindsay. I read through this a few times, and there were just a few vagaries around this that I just wanted to ask you about. And this evolved from the Economic Recovery Task Force that went on for about 9 months. There were 7 applicants, or 7 that went through that, people who were in the site planning stage, and only one of them was successful after 9 months. And the committee, on its report, and what you put in your report, says that the task force was able to increase the recommendations from the Recovery Task Force were to increase the efficiency and delivery times for planning applications. And I wonder, did they specify with that efficiencies and delivery times, what they were and how you plan to address that?
Excuse me, through the chair. So the difficulty with the pilot program was that the concierge was coming into the program midway through. So this was during the site plan, and there wasn't the connection that was being made with the applicant. So I think there were challenges that way, but the goal is of the program is not necessarily to expedite the files, and it's to ensure that the appropriate timelines are met and that there is a customer-focused approach to service delivery. So we, as the concierge, would be with this business as soon as they have an idea, if they have a property that they are interested in expanding to, or their current footprint that they're looking at expanding, then we would be with them from the beginning. And there will be an emphasis on the importance of communicating the city's expectations. So I guess there was Emily who went through the pilot process, that she did make note that it was difficult coming into the site plan, and which is midway through the development process.
Okay, so they didn't really give you too much on that. They just kind of said, we've got issues. The report says that the second program, this new one, concierge, is to address gaps and issues identified in the initial pilot. But what were these gaps? Like, what is it you're looking for? What do you besides introducing people and trying to hold their hand to get through these 5 groups, what are the things that you're looking to improve in? What are the gaps and issues?
So like I said before, it was one of the main gaps was, again, going into the site plan process. So how that's going to be addressed is we will be with this business from the beginning until the end. There were also several businesses that would have been good candidates for the concierge program, but were not eligible because they did not require a site plan. So, or they weren't at the stage of the development process. So through this program, we are able to get businesses, obviously, as long as they meet the eligibility guidelines, through the concierge program, where we are capturing them at the very start of their venture, and being able to provide an elevated service to folks. I mean, as part of the economic development strategy, we do provide base level service to businesses. In general, businesses are looking to come to the city of Kawartha Lakes or expand. We are providing services to them, whatever they mean, whether it be funding, they're looking for property, they're looking to connect with other businesses, or whatever resources we're able to provide. But through the concierge program, we're able to provide an elevated service where I will be with them as part of this program. If they have any questions, they can reach out to me. If there's communication breakdown on the city side, if we haven't received applications from them, I can then follow up to keep the program moving, to keep these applications moving forward, so we can continue to bring more investment in. We have capacity for 5. If one of these applicants it's not moving along, well, what can I do to help it move along in order to get more people into this program?
Excellent, thank you very much. I just wondered how much of your time what portion of your time is going to be committed to this as opposed to whatever you're doing now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it's hard to say. A large chunk of my job is investment attraction, is working with businesses, specifically in the manufacturing sector, who are expanding, who are looking to relocate into our community. So, I mean, this is already a large part of my position, but and I mean, ideally, I would love to accommodate everybody as best as possible, but I do have, other jobs that I do as part of my role. So we'll see how it all rolls out when I have 5 applicants within this program and, everybody's running through smoothly. So that is an excellent question.
Okay, terrific. We'll be here to support you. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Go ahead, Richard.
Through the chair. Thanks for that overview, Lindsay. I think a couple of observations for the initial program. I think the initial program was sort of focused a lot on getting shovel-ready projects through the process. So Lindsay's correct. When Emily was anointed as the concierge, she was stepping into the process sort of halfway along, and there were a lot of residential projects. There were some commercial projects that were going on, and they sort of sometimes have a natural start-stop cycle, which is a little bit different, I think, from where we're trying to focus this on. I think we're trying to focus this now on sort of more business. So, for example, I'll give you an example of one that would have been great to go through this process, was the Brooklyn Concrete one. That would have been a great application to go through this process, but because it wasn't necessarily tied to a Planning Act process, it wasn't part of the process. So I think what we're trying to do here is we're trying to focus this more on business in different sectors as opposed to, say, a high-density residential project or a large commercial project. I think we're trying to focus this more on business development, manufacturing, those kinds of things, so that when Lindsay gets that call from someone that wants to bring in, a business with say 10 or more employees, we can then focus on that and move that through the process fairly efficiently, because I think those are some of the projects that we really want to help out, and move through the process. So I think it is a little bit of a refocus in terms of where we're focusing our energy on. So I hope that helps as a bit of a reason for the shift. So,
Mayor Letham.
Yeah, I'll just add a comment, and you had some great questions, Mike. I think because this is a start to finish process, this will help identify those gaps. Like years into the program, it's like where has Lindsay struggled to keep it moving forward? Where did we, if we do, where was the low spot in that process when we're talking about, employment and business programs? So I think, it's because it's a more complete program from start to finish, it's going to give us some more answers down the road on, what we can improve on if we need to improve. So, yeah. Okay.
Any further comments or questions? Okay. Somebody like to make a motion that the presentation be received? Mayor Letham, seconded by Member Barkwell. All in favor? Motion carried. Last motion of the day. Who needs an alibi? Motion to adjourn. Member Barkwell, seconded. Member Brumwell, all in favor? Carried. Thanks, everyone.